Right, we turn to this now. Civic organization Defend Our Democracy has lambasted the state for failing to prosecute in the Nulane trial. This after the first case of alleged state capture-linked corruption ended in acquittal in the Free State High Court on Friday. Defend Our Democracy spokesperson Nonkululeko Mntambo joins us now to unpack this further. Nonkululeko, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on. Why did the first state capture case to reach trial collapse? So what would you base this failure of this case on?
Thank you for having us on. I think Judge Gusha made it quite clear what the failures had been, and it was the treatment of the case by the National Prosecuting Authority. From what we were told in 2019, that this was a watertight case. What had transpired post the fact is something that is much, much less than what we were told. And the loopholes, the carelessness, the inefficiency of the NPA and the state were laid bare. And we sit in this position right now because of exactly that.
Can we blame this still on the hollowing out of this institution in the past? Because head of the NPA, Shamila Patohi, gave us the assurance that the NPA is being recapacitated.
I believe that there's many factors that can be put to the NPA. However, what cannot be is that we as civil society and we are the people who are owed justice must then diagnose and repair the NPA. I think it is up to the NPA itself to tell us exactly how this went so absolutely wrong and what is the plan moving forward, because as you said, this is the first case and there's many more to come, and it has been referred to as a case within a case. So we are as much expectant of answers as everyone else.
And the fact that, I mean, in their response, they don't seem to see this case failing having any bearing on their ability to prosecute state capture matters in the future. It says to us they don't see a need to correct in any way possible. I mean, the judge says they failed to do a simple thing as just to obtain originals and make copies and provide those copies. I mean, it's just the basic of things. Do you see this as a dereliction of duty?
We see this as a genuine lack of accountability, and perhaps it even leads to a lack of consequence, because it cannot be that a case of this magnitude is lost and there's such a blasé attitude around it. It does show that there is, to your first point, that perhaps there does need to be a recapacitating of the NPA. However, it might not rest in its people, but in its accountability structures and in its processes to hold people accountable to the jobs that they need to do. Because at the point where an investigation is done so sloppily that you can't even get original copies, as you said, it can't be that such a case can be, that such a thing can be left unaccounted for, not only within the NPA, but even to us, the citizens, who are supposed to be protected by the NPA.
This happens, of course, at the back of the fact that we also, not so long ago, heard of the state's failure to extradite the Gupta's key features in future state capture cases. What is the message that is beginning to be sent to South Africa here? One, on the ability, the talent, and the skills of the head of this institution, Shamila Patohi.
Well, ourselves as Defend Our Democracy, together with the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, Corruption Watch, and OUTA, will be picketing at the UAE on the 27th of April, lamenting the contempt with which the UAE has treated the SA government in terms of extraditing the Guptas. However, there is still space for us within our own borders to correct, because we must look at the processes that we have been following and if these processes have been followed correctly. And at the point where we admit to ourselves that there is a failure within these institutions, then the contempt cannot rest only with the UAE government, but even within our own government. Just what exactly has been happening and how do we move forward? And this is the message definitely is that the government needs to back up and step up to the plate and, one, tell us how what went wrong, and two, tell us how it's going to be fixed. Because right now we're not at a point where we can stand another op-ed or another PR whitewashing of a situation. We sincerely need answers, or else the next cases are going to see the same type of treatment and the same type of failures.
Yeah. For many South Africans, we failed to act decisively in, for example, the leadership of the NPA for a very long time. And whether or not we still have the appetite to prolong the situation, as opposed to asking that very important question, is Shamila Batoy the strong, independent individual that is needed to lead this institution in terms of her legal talent and her skills, maybe even her ability to act decisively against those line managers who clearly failed to do what they were supposed to do in this particular matter?
I think absolutely there's as the saying goes, justice delayed is justice denied. So absolutely there's going to be a degree of fatigue within South Africans. I think ours as defenders, our democracy, is not necessarily focused on personalities, but on processes. What allows for such things to happen? What allows for such people to happen? What allows for such failures to happen? And our fear is that even if there's a replacement of certain personalities, should those issues not be accounted for, our systems of accountability, we'll be asking ourselves the same question, not 6 months or a year from now.
Yeah. Speaking of processes and systems in place, do we still have deeply compromised individuals within the system, you think?
That stands to be accounted for. I think it's very difficult to stand at this juncture and make such a huge statement. I think it's something that needs to be ratified by accountability process. It's sad that it all kind of is a snake that eats itself, that for us to find out where the leakages are, there needs to be a using of the same processes that are failing. So absolutely, once we have seen this case through and understood where the failures have been, I think that they very well might be the issue of people themselves and not simply just issues of carelessness.
Yeah, because we've got to go through this, because there could be various reasons why this is happening. It could be, as you put it, lack of accountability. It could be that this organization is still not acting independently enough. There's still no autonomy. There is still what we've always talked about, political interference. But if you look at the political climate within the country right now, is it at a space where it allows the NPA to act independently?
We want to hope that this is something that can happen, that our judiciary is at a point where it can be completely and utterly independent. However, as we've seen the developments within the country, there has been, as you've noted quite well, political interference and the interference of simply capital within our institutions. What we, however, cannot do is yield to that point and accept it as a truth. What we must do is hold these systems, bodies accountable, so that we can thresh out exactly what the issue is, whether it be people, external interference, or internal carelessness. It's just a managerial issue. Ours is definitely to be, I think, wherever the issue may lie, which I would very tactfully try and say it lies in many, many places. We cannot simply accept it. We must put people's feet to the fire. And for us to find the answers that you are asking for, we need to thresh out what happened in this case completely.
Yeah. Other countries have acted swiftly on some of these matters and on the individuals involved, and companies, be it private sector companies that have been, for example, had their contracts terminated, no longer allowed to conduct any business with the state. There's a question around failure to act swiftly and vigorously within the NPA. Can we bring that down to the fact that these commercial crimes take time, for example, to gather evidence and to build a solid case? So they are so complex, hence things are taking such a long time to get going.
No, I think that's an unacceptable answer completely. And it's something that the Defend Our Democracy has raised on many occasions, that the backlog that is being experienced not only by the NPA but the judiciary as a whole is something that is causing a culture of unaccountability in South Africa. Looking at issues, for instance, like the Zondo report itself, is something that has for years been standing. For years we've been waiting for answers, and for once we see this we see a trial come to fore years after the report has been concluded, and this is how it's treated. There's definitely an under-resourcing of the NPA and other points of our judiciary, and there needs to be a genuine thinking into how do we expand these things to accommodate the for the idea that these things are and they're too complex to be put forth as an answer to the genuine questions that people are looking for on issues of justice. It's completely unacceptable.
Yeah. I suppose the real question that at least I am asking, and I'm sure there are many others who are asking that question, is the rule of law at risk here? I mean, are we justified in having concern about the rule of law if certainly when it gets to where justice needs to be meted out, we can see such incapacity?
Absolutely, there's a threat to the rule of law, and I would even go as far as to say democracy itself, because as studies have shown, crime is not deterred by large sentences; it's deterred by the ability to be caught. And right now, the crime in South Africa is completely unaccounted for. Even if we were to move sentences to 100 years and bring back death penalties and things of that nature, if no one is caught, crime is not deterred.